My name is Pearl, 58 years old, and nothing could have prepared me for what happened at my only son's wedding. After paying $75,000 for the entire event, I discovered my seat assignment was at a table in the kitchen, away from family and friends. The shock froze me in place as I stared at the place card with my name. I smiled, stayed quiet, and took my seat among the catering staff. What the bride didn't know was that I had already made a decision that would change everything. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Would you have stayed quiet like I did, or caused a scene right there at the wedding? I raised my son Andrew as a single mother since he was 10 years old. His father, my beloved husband James, passed away from pancreatic cancer after an 18-month battle that drained our savings and broke our hearts. The night after the funeral, Andrew crawled into my bed, his small body shaking with sobs. "Who's going to teach me to play baseball now, Mom?" he asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. That question shattered what remained of my heart. I promised him then that somehow I would be enough for both of us. I would fill every role, mother, father, provider, protector, whatever he needed. Our life wasn't easy after James died. I had been a part-time elementary school secretary, but that salary wouldn't cover our mortgage, let alone everything else. I took on 2 additional jobs, waitressing evenings at the local steakhouse and doing bookkeeping for small businesses on weekends. Many nights I would return home after midnight exhausted, but still take time to check Andrew's homework and leave notes in his lunchbox. "You're the strongest person I know, Mom," Andrew told me on his 16th birthday. We were celebrating at our favorite diner because it was all I could afford that month after paying for his driver's education classes. "Someday I'm going to take care of you the way you've taken care of me." Those words meant everything. They kept me going through the hardest times, when the furnace broke during the coldest winter in decades, when our car died and I had to take 3 buses to get to work, when I had to sell my wedding ring to pay for Andrew's senior class trip. Through it all, Andrew and I maintained a close bond. He was a thoughtful, hard-working boy who grew into a compassionate, ambitious young man. He excelled in school, especially in mathematics and science. When he received a partial scholarship to study engineering at the State University, I nearly burst with pride. "This is just the beginning, Mom," he said, hugging me tight at his high school graduation. "Everything is going to be different now." He was right, though not in the way either of us expected. I worked even harder during his college years, taking out modest loans to cover what his scholarship didn't. Every Sunday without fail we talked on the phone. Every holiday and break he came home. Even after he graduated and secured a position at a prestigious engineering firm 2 hours away, we maintained our Sunday calls and monthly visits. "No matter how busy I get, you're always my priority, Mom," he would say. For 22 years it was just Andrew and me against the world. We created our own traditions: Christmas Eve movies with homemade caramel popcorn, summer fishing trips to Lake Morrison, where James had once taught Andrew to cast a line birthday breakfast in bed, no matter whose birthday it was. Our little family of 2 wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it was enough. Then Andrew met Stephanie, and everything changed. Andrew called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice vibrating with excitement. "Mom, I met someone. Her name is Stephanie, and she's amazing. I want you to meet her this weekend." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, ignoring the small twinge in my chest. Andrew had dated before, of course, but something in his voice told me this was different. "I'd love to meet her." He arranged dinner at Castellano's, an upscale Italian restaurant I'd never been to. The moment I walked in, I felt underdressed in my navy pantsuit, the nicest outfit I owned. Andrew waved from a corner table, standing as I approached. Beside him, a stunning young woman with honey blonde hair and perfect posture remained seated, her eyes assessing me from head to toe. "Mom, this is Stephanie Morgan. Steph, this is my mother, Pearl Wilson." Stephanie extended a manicured hand, her grip limp, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "It's nice to finally meet you. Andrew talks about you constantly." The way she said constantly carried a subtle edge that made me uneasy. Throughout dinner, I tried to engage Stephanie in conversation, asking about her family, her job, and marketing her interests. Her answers were polite but brief, often redirected to showcase her accomplishments or connections. When I mentioned Andrew's childhood fishing trips, she wrinkled her nose. Fishing with all those worms and fish guts, that's certainly rustic," she said, sharing a private smile with Andrew. What troubled me most was how Andrew seemed different in her presence. My son, who always showed genuine interest in everyone he met, who asked thoughtful questions, and listened carefully to the answers, now seemed focused solely on impressing Stephanie. He ordered expensive wine he couldn't pronounce, laughed too loudly at her jokes, and repeatedly touched her arm as if reassuring himself she was really there. "Your son has quite the future ahead of him," Stephanie told me over dessert, her arm possessively linked with his. "I'm helping him network with some of my father's connections. They're always looking for bright engineers at their firms." The implication was clear. Andrew's current job, the one he'd worked so hard to get and loved so much, wasn't good enough for her vision of their future. In the weeks that followed, I noticed troubling changes. Andrew began canceling our Sunday calls, then apologizing profusely afterward. Stephanie surprised me with brunch with her college friends, or we were checking out this new property development her father invested in. When he did visit, he often brought Stephanie, who would make comments about my modest home. "This wallpaper is so vintage," she said, during one visit running her finger along my dining room wall. "You know, a fresh coat of paint would brighten this whole place up. I could recommend an interior designer who did my condo." "The wallpaper was a project my late husband and I did together," I explained. "It has sentimental value." "Well, sentimentality doesn't improve property values," she replied with a tight smile. "Andrew, who once would have jumped to defend our home, and memories simply changed the subject." Another time, as I served the pot roast I'd spent all day preparing, Stephanie pushed the plate away slightly. "I'm trying to cut down on red meat. Andrew and I are focusing on cleaner eating these days." My son, who had always loved my pot roast, nodded in agreement. "Stephanie's teaching me a lot about nutrition. Maybe next time you could make something with quinoa." I didn't even know what quinoa was. The most hurtful moments came when Stephanie would make comments about our past. When I mentioned how proud I was that Andrew had worked through college, she responded, "It's so admirable when people overcome disadvantaged backgrounds. Thankfully, our children won't have to struggle like that." Children. They had been dating for 4 months. Despite my growing concerns, I kept my thoughts to myself. Andrew seemed happy, or at least he thought he was happy, and that's what mattered most to me. I smiled through the subtle insults, ignored the dismissive gestures, and tried to find common ground with the woman who was clearly becoming central to my son's life. Then came the evening Andrew called breathless with news. "Mom, we're engaged. I proposed to Stephanie last night and she said yes. 6 months. They had known each other for only 6 months." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I managed to say, pushing down my reservations. "I'm so happy for you both." "We're thinking about having the wedding in 8 months at Lakeside Resort. It's where Stephanie's parents renewed their vows for their 25th anniversary." 8 months is pretty soon," I ventured carefully. "And Lakeside Resort is quite expensive, isn't it?" There was a pause before Andrew replied, his voice different, defensive. "Stephanie deserves the best mom. It's her special day." I didn't remind him that it was supposed to be their special day. I didn't mention that 8 months barely gave people time to RSVP, let alone save for travel and gifts. I didn't point out that Andrew, still paying off student loans, couldn't possibly afford such a venue. Instead, I said, "Of course she does, honey. I just want everything to be perfect for both of you." What I didn't know then was how much that perfection would cost me, not just financially, but in ways I couldn't yet imagine. 2 weeks after the engagement announcement, Andrew asked if I would meet him for coffee, alone. My heart lightened at the prospect of spending time with just my son, like we used to. The coffee shop was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon. Andrew arrived late, looking nervous, fiddling with his napkin. After awkward small talk about the weather and his job, he cleared his throat. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the wedding." "I'm all ears, sweetheart." "Stephanie has her heart set on Lakeside Resort. She's dreamed of getting married there since she was a little girl." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "The thing is, it's expensive, really expensive. And with the guest list at 150 people, plus the band, she wants the flowers, the catering." "Have you considered something smaller?" I suggested gently. "Your father and I got married in my parents' backyard with just 40 guests, and it was beautiful." Andrew winced. Stephanie doesn't want small or simple. She says you only get married once, so it should be spectacular. I bit back my comment about divorce statistics and waited. Mom, he leaned forward, his eyes pleading. I hate to ask this, but is there any way you could help with the costs? Maybe just the venue deposit to start? I know it's a lot, but this means everything to Stephanie. I want to give her the wedding of her dreams. My stomach tightened. The venue deposit for Lakeside Resort was $15,000, non-refundable. That was nearly half of my annual income. What does Stephanie's family plan to contribute? I asked carefully. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. Well, that's the thing. Her parents believe the bride's family shouldn't have to pay for the wedding. They say it's an outdated tradition that the groom's family should handle the expenses. I stared at him dumbfounded. But her family is much more financially comfortable than I am. Her father owns a real estate development company, doesn't he? They've offered to pay for her dress and the rehearsal dinner, Andrew said weakly, and they're giving us a down payment for a house as a wedding gift. So they had money for a house down payment, but not for their daughter's dream wedding. The unfairness of it struck me like a physical blow. How much are we talking about, Andrew, total? He couldn't meet my eyes. Around $75,000. The number hung in the air between us. $75,000, more than 2 years' salary for me, more than I had in my entire retirement account. I know it's a lot, he rushed to add, but I can pay you back over time, once I get the promotion I'm up for, and Stephanie moves up at her firm. I thought about the life insurance money from James, the money I'd been saving for 22 years, adding to little by little, designating as my retirement fund and emergency backup. I thought about how hard I'd worked, how many double shifts I'd taken, how many simple pleasures I'd denied myself to build that safety net. But then I looked at my son's face, the same face that had looked up at me from a hospital bed when he had pneumonia at 12, from the stage at his high school graduation, from across the dinner table every Sunday for years. My only child. My whole world. Of course I'll help, Andrew. I want you to have a beautiful wedding. His face lit up as he reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. Wait until I tell Stephanie. She's going to be so happy. I forced a smile. I just want to be involved in the planning, okay? Since I'm contributing, I'd like to have some input. Absolutely, Andrew agreed quickly. You and Stephanie can plan everything together. It'll be great bonding time for you two. That's not how it worked out. From the moment I wrote the first check, Stephanie took complete control of the wedding planning. She created a special email account for wedding communications, but rarely included me. When I asked about cake tastings or flower selections, I was told those appointments had, unfortunately, already happened. We had to make quick decisions, Stephanie explained during one of our rare planning meetings. The best vendors get booked so quickly. I suggested incorporating some Wilson family traditions, perhaps using the cake topper from my wedding with James, or playing the song Andrew and his father used to dance to. Oh, Pearl, Stephanie said with a tight smile, we're going for a very specific aesthetic. Vintage items would clash terribly, and our playlist is already finalized with the band. When I asked if I could give a mother of the groom speech at the reception, Stephanie frowned. The schedule is already so tight with my father's speech, the best man and the maid of honor. Too many speeches drag on and bore guests. Meanwhile, Stephanie's mother attended every vendor meeting, selected the table linens, approved the menu, and even chose the tie color for Andrew. Nancy has such an eye for these things, Stephanie would say, referring to her mother. She planned charity galas for years. Each time I wrote another check, for the photographer, the florist, the band, the caterer, I felt more and more like an ATM rather than the mother of the groom. Don't take it personally, Andrew told me when I expressed my hurt feelings. Stephanie is under so much stress. She just wants everything to be perfect. I understand that, I replied, but I feel excluded from one of the most important days in your life. You're not excluded, Mom. You'll be right there at the wedding. As it turned out, I would be right there, just not where anyone could see me. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Lakeside Resort at 9 o'clock, as instructed, my hair freshly styled at the salon, wearing the dusty blue mother of the groom dress I'd purchased specifically for the occasion. The bridal suite was a flurry of activity. bridesmaids in matching robes, makeup artists with their extensive kits, photographers capturing every moment. I stood awkwardly in the doorway, gift bag in hand, until one of the bridesmaids noticed me. "Oh, Pearl, come in," she said, though no one else acknowledged my arrival. Stephanie sat in the center of the room, her mother adjusting her veil. When she saw me, her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Pearl, you're early." "The schedule said 9 o'clock," I replied. "For the bridal party. Family photos aren't until 11. "I am family," I reminded her, gently extending the gift bag. "I brought you something special." Inside was a handkerchief that had belonged to my grandmother, carefully embroidered with blue thread. "Something old and something blue," I explained. "I carried it at my wedding, and I thought maybe you might want it for yours." Stephanie barely glanced inside the bag before setting it aside. "Thank you, but I already have my something blue. Nancy gave me a sapphire bracelet that matches my eyes perfectly." Her mother looked up, giving me a cold once-over. "Pearl, there's really not enough room in here with all the girls and the photographers. Why don't you wait in the lobby until we need you for photos?" I spent the next 2 hours sitting alone in the resort lobby, watching other wedding guests arrive and greet each other warmly. No one recognized me as the groom's mother. When it was finally time for photos, I was positioned at the far edge of group shots, often with Stephanie's extended family members blocking me from view. For several setups, the photographer didn't include me at all. "We're doing immediate family only for this one," he explained during one arrangement. "I am immediate family," I said. "I'm the groom's mother, his only parent." "Oh," he looked confused, checking his shot list. "You're not on my list for this grouping. Let me check with the bride." Stephanie, resplendent in her designer gown, waved dismissively. "We need to stay on schedule. We'll make sure to get some photos with Pearl later." Later never came. As guests began arriving for the ceremony, I took my seat in the front row on the groom's side, the only person there as Andrew had no siblings, and both my parents were deceased. Across the aisle, Stephanie's side was filled with relatives, including extended family and friends, given honorary family status. The ceremony itself was beautiful, if impersonal. No mention was made of James or Andrew's childhood. None of the readings reflected values Andrew had once held dear, but my son looked handsome and happy as he watched his bride walk down the aisle on her father's arm, so I pushed aside my disappointment and focused on his joy. After the ceremony, guests moved to the cocktail hour while the wedding party took more photos. I mingled awkwardly, introducing myself to strangers who seemed surprised to learn I was the groom's mother. Several people mistook me for a distant relative or family friend. Eventually, we were all ushered into the grand ballroom for the reception. Tables were arranged with elaborate centerpieces, each with a number and a list of assigned guests. I wandered from table to table searching for my name. Table 1, the head table, featured the bride and groom, Stephanie's parents, the maid of honor, and the best man. My name wasn't there. Table 2, immediate family, was filled with Stephanie's siblings' grandparents and an aunt who had helped raise her. My name wasn't there either. I continued searching, moving from tables 3 through 12, growing increasingly confused. Perhaps there had been a mistake. A forgotten place card. A harried-looking wedding coordinator approached me. "Can I help you find your seat, ma'am?" "Yes, please. I'm Pearl Wilson, the groom's mother." She checked her tablet, scrolling through the seating chart. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, then discomfort. "Oh, Mrs. Wilson, you're at table 19. She led me through the ballroom past all the guest tables through a service door and into the kitchen area. There, next to the swinging doors where servers would come and go throughout the evening, was a small table with a single centerpiece. A place card with my name sat before one of the 4 chairs. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice hardly more than a whisper. The coordinator avoided my eyes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson. This is what was approved by the bride." "Who else is sitting here?" I asked, noticing the other place settings. 2 of the photographer's assistants and the wedding singer's agent. My legs felt weak as I sank into the chair. Through the kitchen doors, I could see the glittering ballroom, hear the murmur of happy conversation. But here I sat, hidden away like something shameful, despite having paid $75,000 for this entire event. I must have sat there for several minutes stunned when I heard a familiar voice. "Mom, what are you doing back here?" Andrew stood in the kitchen doorway, his expression confused. "Apparently this is my assigned seat," I said quietly. "Table 19. He looked at the place card, then around at the kitchen, setting his brow furrowed. "That can't be right. Let me talk to Stephanie." He disappeared back into the ballroom. Through the door's window I could see him approach his bride, leaning down to speak in her ear. She shook her head, gestured emphatically, then pointed toward the head table where her mother sat, smiling perfectly positioned in the center of the room. When Andrew returned, his face had changed. Something had hardened, or perhaps weakened. "Stephanie says there was a mix-up with the table numbers, but it's too late to change things now. All the other tables are full." "A mix-up," I repeated. "Andrew, I'm sitting in the kitchen. Me, your mother. The person who raised you alone for 22 years. The person who paid for this entire wedding." He shifted uncomfortably. "It's just for dinner, Mom. It's not a big deal. You'll still be part of everything else." "Did you know about this seating arrangement?" His hesitation told me everything. Stephanie handled the seating chart. I trust her judgment. And her judgment was to put me in the kitchen while her extended family and friends fill the ballroom. Andrew looked torn, glancing back toward his bride. "Mom, please, it's our wedding day. Can we not make a scene? It's just a table." In that moment, I saw with painful clarity what our relationship had become. My son, who I had sacrificed everything for, couldn't even stand up for me on his wedding day. He was asking me, begging me, to accept this humiliation quietly so his bride wouldn't be upset. And because I loved him, because I had always put his happiness above my own, I nodded. "You're right. It's your day. Go enjoy it." Relief washed over his face. "Thanks, Mom. I'll come check on you later." He didn't. As I sat at that kitchen table watching the celebration through swinging doors, something inside me shifted. The servers bustled around giving me sympathetic glances. One of them, an older woman named Maria, squeezed my shoulder as she passed. "I've worked hundreds of weddings," she whispered. "Never seen anything like this." The photographer's assistants and the agent eventually joined me, looking equally uncomfortable with the arrangement. We made stilted conversation over rubbery chicken and lukewarm vegetables. During a lull, Maria brought me a glass of champagne that was nicer than what had been served at my table. "The bride specifically instructed us to serve the kitchen table the cheaper alcohol," she confided. "Said no one would know the difference." "How kind of her," I replied, taking a long sip. "Between us," Maria continued, lowering her voice. She was bragging about it earlier. Said something about putting the mother-in-law in her place. Her bridesmaids thought it was hilarious. The champagne turned bitter in my mouth. This wasn't a mix-up or an oversight. It was deliberate cruelty designed to humiliate me on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life, too. As the evening progressed and I watched my son dance with his bride through the kitchen doors, I made a decision. I excused myself to use the restroom, but instead found a quiet corner in the lobby and took out my phone. First, I called my bank and canceled the remaining payments that were scheduled to go out the next day, the final installments to the caterer, the resort, and the band. Next, I called the travel agency and canceled the honeymoon arrangements I had paid for as a surprise, a 2-week trip to the Amalfi Coast, Andrew's dream destination. Finally, I texted my lawyer and asked him to halt the transfer of the deed to the small house I had purchased as a wedding gift for the couple. The house was in my name, the closing scheduled for the Monday after the wedding. With each cancellation, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I had been so focused on making Andrew happy that I had allowed myself to be treated as nothing more than a checkbook. No more. I returned to the kitchen table long enough to finish my champagne, thank Maria for her kindness, and gather my purse. No one noticed when I slipped out a side exit and drove home in the gathering darkness. That night, I sat in my quiet house, the house where I had raised my son, and I wept for the first time since James died. I wept for the little boy who had once looked at me like I was his whole world. I wept for the relationship that had been corrupted by Stephanie's influence. Most of all, I wept for my own failure to set boundaries earlier, to recognize that love doesn't mean being a doormat. Then I dried my tears, straightened my shoulders, and began making plans for a new chapter of my life. One where I would be valued, respected, and never hidden away in the kitchen again. The fallout came faster than I expected. At 8 o'clock the morning after the wedding, my phone rang. Andrew's name flashed on the screen. "What the hell, Mom?" he demanded without preamble. "The resort manager just called Stephanie. They say the final payment was canceled and they're holding our deposit until we pay the balance." "That's correct," I replied calmly. "What, Mom? They're threatening to put a lien against us if we don't pay by the end of the week. That sounds like a problem for you and Stephanie to solve." There was a stunned silence before Andrew spoke again, his voice incredulous. "Are you serious right now? You promised to pay for the wedding. You can't just back out after the fact." "I promised to pay for a wedding where I would be treated with basic human dignity, not hidden away in the kitchen like something shameful." "It was just a seating chart mistake," Andrew protested. "No, it wasn't. Stephanie deliberately seated me in the kitchen. Her mother got the place of honor while I was tucked away out of sight after paying for everything. The waitstaff confirmed it wasn't a mistake." Another silence then. "Okay, maybe the seating wasn't ideal, but to cancel everything. The honeymoon too. The travel agent already called us." "Yes, the honeymoon too. And the house." "The house. What house?" I took a deep breath. "I purchased a small house as your wedding gift. The closing was scheduled for tomorrow. I've instructed my lawyer to halt the process." Andrew's voice became desperate. "Mom, please. We're supposed to fly out tomorrow. Stephanie is crying. Her parents are furious. This is ruining everything." "I'm sorry you're upset, Andrew. I truly am. But actions have consequences. Stephanie chose to humiliate me on your wedding day, and this is the consequence. She didn't mean to hurt you. She just wanted the seating arrangement to look balanced. By putting me in the kitchen. That's not balance, Andrew. That's cruelty." I could hear muffled conversation on his end. Then Stephanie's voice came through shrill and angry. "Pearl, this is completely unacceptable. You're ruining the most important days of our lives because of your hurt feelings over a simple seating arrangement. This is why I wanted to limit your involvement in the first place. You make everything about you." "Stephanie," I replied evenly, "I paid $75,000 for your wedding. I was given no say in any decisions. I was excluded from photos positioned at the edge of group shots when I was included at all. And then I was seated in the kitchen while your extended family took priority in the ballroom. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about basic respect, which you have never shown me." "We need to talk about this in person." Andrew cut in, taking the phone back. "Can we come over?" 2 hours later, Andrew and Stephanie sat across from me in my living room. Stephanie's eyes were red-rimmed, but her expression was hard. Andrew looked exhausted, caught between his new wife and his mother. "I want to understand exactly what happened," I began. "Andrew, did you know I was going to be seated in the kitchen?" He hesitated, glancing at Stephanie. "I knew you weren't at the main tables, but I didn't realize exactly where you'd be sitting." "That's a lie," Stephanie snapped. "I showed you the seating chart. You didn't have a problem with it." Andrew flushed. "I didn't look at it closely. I trusted you to handle it fairly." I turned to Stephanie. "Why did you put me in the kitchen?" She crossed her arms defensively. "The main tables were for people who are important in our lives going forward. My family will be part of our future. They deserve prominence." The casual cruelty of her statement hung in the air. "And I won't be part of your future?" I asked quietly. "Not in the same way," she replied. "You live in the past, Pearl, always talking about when Andrew was little what his father would think. We're building a new life, a better life, one that isn't defined by struggle and sacrifice." Andrew winced. "Steph, that's not fair." "It's completely fair. Your mother clings to you, makes you feel guilty about moving forward. She uses her sacrifices as a weapon." "I have never used my sacrifices as a weapon," I said firmly. "I made those choices out of love, not to create obligation." "Then prove it," Stephanie challenged. "Pay for the wedding and honeymoon like you promised, without conditions. If you truly love Andrew without strings attached, you'll want him to be happy regardless of where you sat at the reception." I looked at my son, this young man I had poured my life into, now sitting silently as his wife tried to manipulate me with my own love for him. "Andrew," I said, ignoring Stephanie, Do you think it was right for me to be seated in the kitchen at your wedding?" He stared at the floor. "No," he finally admitted. "It wasn't right." Stephanie made a sound of disbelief. "Seriously, you're taking her side now." "It's not about sides," he replied, a hint of backbone emerging. "It was wrong, Stephanie. My mother deserved better." "Fine," Stephanie huffed. "I'm sorry you felt slighted, Pearl. Is that what you want to hear?" "An apology." "I want a genuine recognition of what happened," I said. "You deliberately humiliated me at an event I paid for entirely. You excluded me from photos from the planning process, from my rightful place as the mother of the groom. Why?" Stephanie's facade cracked slightly. "Because you're always there, always perfect in his eyes, Saint Pearl who sacrificed everything. How am I supposed to compete with that? I needed to show Andrew that we're the family now, not you." The raw truth of her insecurity surprised me. This confident, beautiful young woman had been threatened by me all along. "It was never a competition, Stephanie. There was room for both of us in Andrew's life." Andrew caught the past tense. "Mom, what are you saying?" I took a deep breath. "I'm saying that I can't continue in a relationship where I'm disrespected and humiliated. I won't be financing your honeymoon or giving you the house. Those gifts were offered in good faith to a couple I believed would treat me with basic dignity. That faith has been broken." "So that's it?" Andrew asked, his voice cracking. "You're cutting me off because of Stephanie." "No, I'm establishing boundaries because of choices both of you made. You chose to allow your wife to mistreat me. You chose not to stand up for me when I was literally hidden away in the kitchen." "What do you want from us?" Stephanie demanded. "Total submission to control our lives with your money." "I want respect, Stephanie. Something you've never given me. I want acknowledgement from both of you that what happened was wrong. And I want a genuine apology, not a defensive justification." They left without resolving anything. Stephanie refused to truly apologize, maintaining that I was overreacting. Andrew was torn, unwilling to fully challenge his new wife, but clearly uncomfortable with how I had been treated. As I closed the door behind them, I knew that our relationship would never be the same. There would be no quick fix, no easy reconciliation. The road ahead would be difficult and painful, but for the first time in a long time, I was putting myself first. And there was a strange, sad freedom in that. 6 months after the wedding, I moved to Springbrook, a small town 3 hours away. I sold my house, the home where I had raised Andrew, and bought a cozy 2-bedroom cottage with a garden and a front porch swing. It was a fresh start, painful but necessary. The first month was the hardest. Every time the phone rang, I hoped it might be Andrew. It never was. I'd sent him my new address and phone number in a brief email, but received no response. According to mutual friends, he and Stephanie were struggling with debt from the wedding expenses and tensions in their marriage. To fill my days and meet people in my new community, I joined a book club at the local library. During our discussion of a novel about family dynamics, I found myself sharing a sanitized version of my own story. My son got married recently, and things didn't go as I hoped. I explained to the group of mostly older women. "I'm trying to figure out who I am now that motherhood isn't my primary identity." Eleanor, a silver-haired widow in her 70s, approached me after the meeting. "That sounded like quite the understatement," she said kindly. "Would you like to grab coffee and talk properly?" That coffee led to my joining a different kind of group, one Eleanor had founded years before. The Boundary Builders. She called it a support circle for people navigating complicated family relationships. "Family can be the greatest blessing and the greatest challenge," Eleanor told me during my first meeting. "Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest, often without even realizing it." In that group, I found people who understood. Linda, whose adult children expected financial support while criticizing her life choices. Marcus, whose parents refused to accept his sexuality. Judith, whose sister had stolen her inheritance through manipulation and lies. "The hardest part," Judith said during one session, "was realizing that I could love my sister and still not allow her in my life. Love and boundaries aren't mutually exclusive." That concept became my mantra as I rebuilt my sense of self. I could love Andrew deeply, completely, and still require respect. I could honor my role as his mother without being a doormat. I found new interests, too. I took a pottery class and discovered I had a knack for creating delicate ceramic bowls. I volunteered at an after-school program helping children with their reading. I planted a vegetable garden and shared my harvest with neighbors. Slowly, I created a life that was mine alone, not defined by my relationship with Andrew. 4 months into my new life, I received a text from an unknown number. "Mom, it's Andrew. Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop halfway between our towns. He looked tired, older somehow, the carefree smile I remembered nowhere in sight. "How are you?" I asked after we'd ordered. "Not great," he admitted. "Stephanie and I are seeing a counselor. Things have been difficult." "I'm sorry to hear that." He twisted his wedding ring. "The thing is, the counselor has been helping me see some patterns. How Stephanie isolates me from people who care about me. How she needs to control everything." My heart ached for him, but I stayed silent, waiting. "She did the same thing to her last boyfriend, apparently. His family warned me at the wedding, but I thought they were just bitter." He gave a humorless laugh. "Turns out they were right." "What do you want, Andrew?" I asked gently. "I want to apologize, truly apologize. What happened at the wedding was wrong. I should have protected you, stood up for you. Instead, I let Stephanie humiliate you because it was easier than confronting her." The words I had waited months to hear washed over me like a healing balm. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot to me. I miss you, Mom. I miss our relationship. I miss who I was when I was around you, someone with values and backbone." We talked for hours that day, really talked in a way we hadn't since before Stephanie. He shared his growing recognition of the unhealthy dynamics in his marriage. I shared my journey toward self-respect and boundaries. "Stephanie hasn't changed," he told me toward the end of our conversation. "She still refuses to acknowledge what she did was wrong. She says I'm betraying her by reconnecting with you." "What does that mean for us?" I asked. "It means I'll have to visit you without her knowing for now. I'm not proud of that, but I'm not ready to end my marriage either." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Over the following months, Andrew would drive to see me every few weeks, usually claiming a work obligation or a day with college friends. During those visits, I saw glimpses of my son returning, his genuine laugh, his thoughtful questions, his kind heart. Stephanie never apologized. According to Andrew, she maintained that she had done nothing wrong, that I had overreacted and weaponized my financial support. Perhaps in her version of the story, she was the victim. People often believe what they need to believe to protect their self-image. A year after the wedding, Andrew called with news. "Stephanie and I are separating. She's moving back in with her parents." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I had never wished for his marriage to fail. "Don't be. It's been coming for a long time. The wedding was just the beginning. Once you stopped financing our lifestyle, Stephanie's true colors really showed." "What will you do now?" "Focus on myself for a while. Figure out who I am again. Maybe take that engineering position in Colorado I turned down because Stephanie didn't want to move." The road to healing our relationship has been long and isn't yet complete. There are still moments of tension, old hurts that surface unexpectedly. But we're rebuilding on a foundation of mutual respect this time. As for me, I've found peace in my new life. The woman who sat silently in the kitchen swallowing her humiliation is gone. In her place is someone stronger, someone who knows her worth isn't determined by others' treatment of her. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't sacrifice or silence. Sometimes it's standing up and saying, "This is not acceptable." Sometimes it's walking away from toxicity, even when it breaks your heart to do so. The journey from that kitchen table to where I am now hasn't been easy, but it's been necessary. And despite the pain, I wouldn't change my decision to finally stand up for myself. Some prices are too high, even for the people we love most. If you've ever found yourself compromising your dignity for someone else's happiness, know that you're not alone. True love doesn't require you to make yourself small. It doesn't hide you away in the kitchen while others celebrate in the ballroom. You deserve to take your rightful place at the table of your own life. Has there been a time when you had to set a difficult boundary with someone you loved? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the quietest actions speak the loudest volumes.